My end goal for TeacherApp is not to be an independent organization with self-sustainability and all that.
Right.
My success would be if we can create a system where great content for teachers is created, whether it's created by TeacherApp or whoever it is, because that's what we are starting.
Hello, my name is Pranav Kothari. I work at Educational Initiatives, overseeing all the work we do in assessments and personalized learning for low-income children. I'm so fortunate to have a conversation with Vinod Karate, who is the CEO of TheTeacherApp. I thought it would be really nice to talk to Vinod because he's someone who's transitioned from the corporate sector, someone who was a VP in banking and moved to the development sector. He's been to some of the remotest parts of India, in Pali, in Bihar, in Coimbatore, working with the teachers on the ground there, not using any technology. And in his new avatar, he's using technology to achieve his ambition of touching 1 million teachers with high quality content. I'm excited about this conversation because I've known Vinod from when he was working in the sector, when he started founding, why he decided to find his own organization and start something new. And I've always been amazed by how many partnerships they've been able to strike for the right set of reasons. Vinod, so excited to have you on this show. I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Always great to speak to you. Yeah.
So tell me about yourselves, like where did you grow up and what you did and why are you in this space?
I don't know, I keep telling a lot of millennials in my team, right? So I keep telling them that the best time to grow up in India was in 90s, not to be born in 90s. Right. So a typical story, right? We've seen India change in that time and we were all growing up. So Delhi boy, Malayali, but born and brought up here. I also went to a school which is a Kerala school, so it was very close to the roots that way. So know how to read and write Malayalam. Learned in vernacular. So in hindsight, I realized what is happening to me. In terms of learning in your mother tongue is now understandable. Like there's a science behind it, is what I realized. So learned in Malayalam till 5th grade, and then it was a switch to English. Then went to Delhi University broadly. Was very clear, don't want to do engineering. That was the first pivot of life. And in hindsight, it worked. So did theatre in DU, did a very difficult course called Physics Honours, learned a lot of physics. Then that led to a typical thing that you are confused, what do you do? So okay, MBA karna hai. Landed up in Delhi School of Economics where they were offering an interesting course called Masters in Human Resource and Organizational Development. Okay. Somewhere spoke to a lot of people who said that if you want to really grow fast, be an HR, what demand. And there are less interesting people there, and we also looked at the landscape. There were only 4 programs which were offering that at that point of time. Okay. And Delhi School of Economics was a good brand to be in, and they got through luckily. So that's where serious work started. So tell me after college, what did you do, where did you work, and some of that story. I was very lucky in terms of to start with ICICI Bank, and that was my first job. Interestingly, was given a task of recruiting campus students. Did that for 6 months. I still remember Ram, who was heading the HR there. I saw him in a lecture, in a guest lecture that he was doing. Very inspirational in terms of what ICICI was trying to do at that point of time. That nobody was teaching banking, and banking at that time, this is 2002, 2003, almost early growth stage of Indian banking. It's already happened. The banking phenomenon had already happened in 2000s. But 2002 to 6 was the rapid growth that the banking saw. It's still there. One of the biggest challenge was that nobody was teaching banking and they were all hiring a lot of things. So the prediction at that time was banking industry will hire around 1 lakh people. Right. And if you look at the pipeline, yes, finance was taught, but banking per se was not taught. Right. So there was a lot of thinking happening within ICICI Bank because they were one of the leading Indian banks to see how do we change that. So I was part of this startup team within ICICI called Industry Academia team, where the idea was to see how do we go back and create a pipeline of people who know banking. So a lot of interesting initiatives there. IFBI was one such initiative, but within the bank we started working with graduate schools The idea was to go there, look at their BCom curriculum and add a 6-month elective in banking. Because ICICI had created a lot of content for training their own people, which turned into an e-learning piece, which turned into like a setup of a e-learning center in these schools. And so we tied up with some 100 colleges in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Hyderabad and Odisha. These were the places where ICICI was going to build up their big setup. The idea was go there, tie up with these colleges, train faculties to run an elective in banking, which is a blended program. So 6 months with a center set up by ICICI Bank with PC and content. So that taught you a lot in terms of one, what is the problem in demand supply. You saw what is happening in the colleges and then how do you try to create a solution which is anchored on the demand side but at the same time delivered on the supply side. It's very interesting to see how that structure was. And a lot of that has remained in me in terms of when I'm designing a solution even now, you're keeping in mind that in terms of what's that affordable loss for the college. Right. And when you go into the college, it's a no-brainer that they want it. Right. Operationally learned a lot in terms of what works, what doesn't work. Some of it is very, very nuanced. Right. So that's where it started. And then did that for 2 years, then wanted to make some money. So Lehman Brothers came in. What's that? I needed it at that time. So Lehman Brothers showed up and say, hey, we want to set up a India organization and we want somebody to come and set up our India IIT IIM program. So they picked me up and then obviously Lehman went down and then we were again in a startup mode where Nomura's took us over and then we were trying to rebuild the brand Nomura on campuses and things like that. So did that for 6-7 years. Nice. So that's been my corporate journey.
You talked about the numerous startup experiences sort of that you did. How is starting the Teacher app different from all your previous experiences? Why did you need to start a new organization to achieve the goals that you have? Was it not possible to join an existing organization? So what was the need to start a new organization? How was it different from starting initiatives within a company? If you could elaborate on that, that'd be great.
So never thought of it, and also from a profiling point of view. So if you look at the phenomenon in India, 2007, 8, 9, a lot of VC action started in India. And the profile was if you're IIT IIM, you will get the money. Okay? And you just have to show up. I was not an IIT, I'm not an IIM. So there's no scope. Plus I'm a human resource guy. People don't understand human resource, right? Or they usually misunderstand. So starting off something of my own was not very clear in my head. I was in love with this idea of education and understand that. So STIR was a safe journey that way because Sharath was there and he's a serial entrepreneur. He's already done 2. And I really liked the approach that he was having. I had no idea. I have not met anybody, Ashish, or what's happening in this space. But what he was doing and what he was at least sharing in terms of on paper was looking very interesting. So I thought that would be an easy way to go in. TeacherApp again was, I never thought that I want to kind of do something my own. So I said, okay, my time at STIR has reached a point where I need to explore further. And that's where the conversation started. It was almost Ashish who just nudged me into that. So I was like, no, I want to work in a setup where I go and solve a problem rather than leading it. But starting, nothing changes in terms of you have a problem, you have a fair idea about the class tracks. Rest is you have to still apply. Go excite people to join you, build a momentum to kind of move things from paper to action, and then keep building the minimum viable product. So those things don't change whether you're doing it for, say, an ICICI Bank or Nomura or for that matter, STIR or for TeacherApp. It's just that there is an added pressure of seeing the future, and that's on you. It's not someone else doing it. So that added pressure is there. I'm still new to it. So let's see how it goes. But so far, it's been interesting.
So Vinod, like you mentioned about getting people excited to join the team. What are your top 2 strategies on enlisting the Hanumans? As Ram, how do you get people excited to do what is something that is your vision? And how do you sort of recruit these people and continue to deliver and stay at the Teacher app?
That's a tough one, right? In terms of given the space that we are in, attracting talent and keeping them is always difficult. And we are aware that even though there is a lot of awareness in terms of education as an idea and the problem, there is no pool where you can readily rely and go and say, okay, these guys understand, they know the raw tax of what works and how it works. So I usually do 2 things really well. I think I'm very good at communicating the idea. So So that's very critical in terms of to build a good story about what you really want to do and be honest about it. So especially my first 5 or 6 people that I really rely on, I actually hunt them. So some of my recruiting skills really come handy, where I kind of earmark them, and then it's all about a lot of coffees with them to really tell them the story. So I don't ask them to join or join the bandwagon straight away. I give them a lot of time to figure out what they really want to do. So it's a time-consuming activity. It's not a normal recruiting that you can't attract your core co-founders like that.
Yeah.
And once that is clear and there is excitement, and I also kind of start believing that they're excited, then it's all about figuring out each of their situation and making it work for them.
Right.
And there is no strategy to it. It keeps changing. Each individual is different. Their needs are different. They're coming from different, and they're also going to a different place.
Right.
So how do you kind of carve out that little journey where they add value and you add value to them is an exploration I try to do honestly.
Right.
And that usually works. And this is one element that has to be baked in when you're designing the solution.
Right.
I'm not a person who can run an organization which has 100 people, because I will not have the energy to kind of go to that level. So I will not design a solution which will require a 100 people organization, or I'll leave, I'll do something else and let someone else do it. I'm very clear about it. So I'm a person who can really manage an organization which is 20-25 people, because then I can be invested in people and kind of create that kind of opportunity for people. At the same time, be true to the overall vision, because that's ultimate in what we're doing. There is a war out there. Kids are not learning. There's a situation. So whatever we're building has to solve that. And idea is not just to enthrall 20 people and have a good time. Ultimately, that needs to align. So how do you marry the two is very critical. So in my head as a leader, I'm very clear that that's my limitation. I can't build an organization or sustain an organization which is 100 people. And hence, my designs will have those limitations.
I find that very interesting, because a lot of time we design organizations thinking about the objective we want to achieve, the problem that we want to solve, without having so much of a personal operating style, baked into the plan. Saying that, I may not sort of enjoy fundraising, or I may not enjoy the marketing side of things. So what you're describing is something that's very unique that I haven't heard before.
Yeah. And that's also a lot of learning, especially when you take a product on the ground. That's something that I've learned, and I've been very fortunate to see that. So STIR obviously was a program, but we were also running STIR very interestingly by embedding it into different programs. So those 3 years, the first 3 years in the development sector, I really saw a lot of programs very closely. Whether it was Educate Girls, Room to Read, AIF, Pratham, to name a few, where we were trying to embed STIR, and I got a good sense of what's happening in each of these programs, both from a design point of view and from operationally what's happening on the ground.
So you actually visited these organizations where they were working, you chatted with those people, you understood what the challenges were, what's relatively exciting, and you almost did like a competitive analysis of sorts to get yourself smart, and that helped you decide what type of an organization you want to build.
So two phenomena came out very clearly to me, that there is always a design, which is always a challenge, because we know that the landscape and the terrain is so complicated. Whatever lens you pick, whether it's a student lens or a remedial lens or a teacher lens or a school principal lens or a system lens, there is no clear answer there. So design is a challenge. But when this design gets into operationalization, all kind of things happen.
I see.
So partnerships becomes permissions. On the ground, what is happening, hiring a talent which will work in that remote area, and the design iteration. So the thing that I noticed very, very blatantly in all of these programs was your operationalization starts impacting design. And a lot of time leaders miss that. Or in general, core teams miss that, because you're wearing two different hats. Operationalizing a program in Indian education suddenly starts giving unreasonable demand to design, and design compromises start happening, and you don't realize. So that was very clear in my hand, that when you're designing, keep ops in mind. Who's delivering, who can deliver, can you hire that kind of talent?
But it's hard, no, Vinod? You have funders who are asking you different strategies on ops. You have governments that's sort of pressurizing you to scale. You have your internal design team that's sort of, raising a voice. Like, how do you stay true to the design of the program and not let these outside forces influence?
It's hard. You cannot do that. That's the idea. You need to have the balance and be very clear that it's the design which is leading to operation, not the operation which is leading to design. Because if you're in the second territory, then you're in a risky position. You will not realize soon you will spend a lot of time and energy without having any impact.
Vinod, like partnerships are so difficult, right? And I mean, we went to a retreat where, it was all about why is there no collaboration in the education sector. Since that day in Goa, like you have obviously led the talk on this, right? You have done the partnerships while you were at STIR. You're now doing the partnerships while you're at the Teacher app. So what excites you about collaborations and partnerships?
I know for sure that we are at a stage where the problem of education needs to be looked at from a scale angle. And I have met a lot of people, so I've tried to understand what has happened in this space since, say, 80s, where the challenge was very different in 80s to even prove that, children from this kind of background can actually learn. So it's not something that only privileged children should get. And that's what erstwhile organizations like Digantar, Bodh, Eklavya proved so hard. And that proving could be done at a small scale. And that's why we have Hoshangabad, we have Bodh's work in Rajasthan, or Rishi Valley's work and things like that. And that led to policy change and things like that. RT happened. But today where we are, all solution needs to be done at scale. So scale is very critical. How do we, so in our case, how do we create a system where we can continuously train 90 lakh teachers? And this 90 lakh will become, easily like a 2 crore situation in the next 10 years. Now to solve this kind of a problem can't be done by one organization. That's one. Two, there is no silver bullet, there is no one answer. So we need to find that answer. So it's pretty evident that if many people are trying to find an answer, you will possibly reach somewhere. So those principles are very evident. And I'm a big believer in synergies. I'm a big believer in utilizing each other's knowledge. Plus, in general also, when you work in big organizations where I have been very privileged to work with, you understand what collaboration can enable when different teams, different organizations come together. So you have experienced the benefit of collaboration.
So you talked about like how, the size of the problem is so large. We have 90 lakh teachers that's going to expand to 2 crores. At that scale, it's difficult for any one organization to solve this problem. And that's the reason why you think it's almost, it's trivial. I mean, the idea to do partnerships is almost necessary to do this.
So yeah, that's been the experience too, right? When you collaborate, things happen. And plus we are in a situation where there is no clear answer. But at the same time, we know how mythical is collaboration. So it also has to bake into the design of it. When you're designing a solution, are you keeping in mind that this solution has to fit into existing systems? So when we design, when we decide on technology or what kind of platforms, we are totally aware that platform building is an exercise that will constantly happen. So every state will have their own platform. So how do you design in such a way that your solution fits into an existing system? Similarly, when we take decisions on content formats, we also keep in mind that we are not the only people who want to create this kind of content. Because we know that the ecosystem exists. I'll give you an example here. For example, we know what we're trying to do is how do you communicate a progressive idea, or say on math teaching, to a teacher on a phone so that it's readily available to her anytime, anywhere. Now, this is an exercise that I believe that lakhs and lakhs of people should do parallelly. So that a lot of people will get it right and good content will go to teacher, and then she will figure out how to navigate the best one and the bubbling up and all happen. But for that to happen, somebody and a lot of people have to create content. So when I'm making technology choices in terms of what kind of an authoring tool, what kind of processes takes to convert an idea from a mind of an author or an expert to a paper, to a storyboard, to a final output, we need to keep in mind that it's not the only person who is in TeacherApp who's doing it. There could be a person who is sitting in Ekalavya who could do it because he is sitting on great amount of content and knowledge about how the things work for teacher. There could be somebody who's sitting in an SCRT who could do it. There could be somebody who is a freelance educationalist who could do it.
Correct.
Now, that's what is required when I say that design for collaboration is when you're creating or making any of these choices, keep in mind that can this be done by anyone else who do not have access to TeacherApp? Can that be coded? Now, these are things that will enable collaboration. So, collaboration that way is a myth because a lot of people assume it should happen. And that's been our experience, that we keep meeting in these places where we know there is no brainer. But what's that first step? What's that second step? which will create that what I call a win-win, where it's easy for the other person to try it out. So when I go and approach a dream team organization, that's the design, that we go and say that, okay, what are the enablers to collaboration? So I know that a lot of these organizations wants to digitize, but they think it's too complicated a problem, it's too expensive a problem, and hence they are sitting on the fence. So we go and say that, okay, fine, let's underwrite your learning. So we will take care of your learning. We will give you exposure in terms of what we have done. There is no secret sauce. And we know that you perhaps can do a better job than us. Why don't you just join and learn by creating 6-7 courses? We will fund it. Or we'll convince our funders to fund it, so that your learning is free.
Got it.
Now that enables them to at least try this. And a lot of time we seek collaboration, but you don't design for it. Right. So this is an example where we went and said, okay, this is understandable barrier, let's break that. And bake in that in our funding pipeline itself. So go convince your funders that if collaboration needs to happen, we need to kind of do this. Right. So that's something that I'm very careful about when you're designing the solution. How does it fit into existing systems? That's what I've learned in terms of how do you design for collaboration. It will not happen otherwise, because we all are working with limited resources. But it's needed because none of us are working with secret sauce here. Especially, I don't look at this as my end goal for TeacherApp is not to be an independent organization with self-sustainability and all that. My success would be if we can create a system where great content for teachers is created, whether it's created by TeacherApp or whoever it is, because that's what we are starting. So this, what we are learning and coding should be sustained by ecosystem. That's when real change will happen. Otherwise, yeah, we'll create a great organization, but beyond a point will not change things.
You know, speaking of great content, there's just so much content out there already, right? There are billions of videos on YouTube. There are people who are creating content all around the world. There is already all this content out there. Why not reuse it? Like, why reinvent the wheel? Why start from scratch?
I get that a lot. So I'll give a very long answer to that, because that's a rhetoric that I want to really build in the ecosystem. When we talk about teachers per se, so let's put 2-3 filters, and you'll see that there is no content out there. The moment you put the first filter, teachers, there's very little content out there, because most content usually in the digital world is for students. And there's a significant difference here, because students require concepts, teachers require much more than concepts. They require in terms of how does that concept really work, what does research in learning inform about that concept. So if you have to teach science, there is a pedagogy of science which needs to be understood. And where are the myths building, where are the typical problems, the errors that students make. Now such content doesn't exist, but it's usually behind paywalls and things like that. It doesn't exist freely. The moment you put a filter of language, so teacher filter, now put Hindi filter, there is nothing available for teachers. So all that myth that a lot of content available on YouTube and all just goes for a toss straight away the moment you put these two filters. There is very little content available on concepts in general. Yes, they exist, but not digitally. So I call them locked content. So these content exist, but they're locked. So either they're locked in research papers which are lying in English somewhere, which are PDFs, which our teachers don't read and consume because there's an English research paper. They're locked in organizations and individuals. So there are some 5,000, 6,000 individuals in India who have gone through this kind of pedigree of progressive learning. These are people who have come out of the Delhi University BLEd program, or the MA test program, or now what APU is giving, or these are people who have worked in progressive systems like Rishi Valley, Krishnamurthy's, Mirambikas. So there are 5,000, 6,000 people who are dealing with these ideas, but again, physically. Either they are doing workshops, or they are in organizations which are doing some work. Or this kind of content is available in organizations who are working at a reasonable scale. So Bodh, Eklavya, Homi Babas of the world, tons of experience within these organizations, but they're all small scale, like in a block, in a state max. So content exists, but not digitally. So that's one answer. Two, again, we kind of take a lot of inspiration from this book called The Long Tail. Now, the book kind of talks about the phenomenon that there is infinite demand for anything which is digitally available. So it talks about 98% rule. So if you look at YouTube, you look at iTunes, if you look at Amazon Kindle, out of the millions of books and the songs and the videos out there, the 98% rule says that 98% of them is at least bought or consumed once in a quarter.
Wow.
So that shows there's infinite demand. So the book says as long as you democratize content creation and you break barriers between the users, this long tail will show up. So that's one confidence. So you need to create more and more content so that long tail happens. And if we know that if long tail happens, that means there will be a significant behavior change in the 90 lakh teachers.
Right.
But at the other side, we also know that this is, we don't have luxury of time to build this behavior. So if you look at Facebook, Instagram, Snapchats of the world, they have created a new behavior which didn't exist. Sometimes I also feel that's the behavior we don't need, but they created that behavior. But the riding principle was that let's create okay content, crowdsource content to build that behavior and then now build good content based on analytics. We can't afford that journey. We need high quality content to start that behavior change, which leads to further high quality content and then crowdsourcing happening. So we believe in these two things very, very dearly.
With this focus on quality, is it also playing out in terms of how many teachers finish your course or how many of them come back? I mean, approximately what is the consumption numbers on this?
Two different problems in terms of the puzzle. So one is obviously how do you create more and more and unlock existing content and make it available for teacher in a format which is easy, simple, downloadable, offline characteristics. Other is to kind of even learn the pattern in which this consumption happens. There again, we are looking at multiple use cases. One classic use case is the Netflix binging kind of a thing, where a teacher is there, have time, this thing is available, is constantly learning. We are seeing all kind of patterns in terms of a lot of people are completing content. So we have around 40-45% conversion rate. So if somebody starts a course, 40-45% of them are actually completing it. We have also changed the MOOC format drastically. For example, a couple of characteristics. So typical MOOCs are usually long, 2-3 weeks, and they're synchronous. So it forces the entire group to start together and end together, and there's a certification hanging at the end. We have broken that paradigm. We are saying that we will create courses which are short and they're asynchronous. It doesn't require you to start on a day or end on a day. You can do any time.
Okay.
So that kind of makes it a little more easier. So you can't directly compare, but MOOCs typically have 3%, 4%. We are seeing 45%, which is pretty good. Let's see if once we scale, we can kind of do that.
Yeah.
We are at a reasonable scale right now, around 120,000 users who are already there on the app, which is also good growth, and a lot of organic signs are there. For example, we have roughly around 50 hours of content, so some 20 courses, some 30 podcasts, and some 30 toolkit videos. Everything, the long tail is visible. So there's not a single item which has not been viewed.
That's good.
In the last 6
months.
months.
Validation for the team, no? What they created actually got used, and you can see that effect immediately happening.
Correct. So people are touching it, people are commenting, people are writing on it, people are sharing it. It gets a little depressing when you say kitna dekha, right? So then game changes. So that's where the learning is. Right. Now I'm able to acquire users because organically there is demand. And to your question, a lot of people are coming back because they are experiencing that everything there is of certain quality.
Right.
Or they are seeing that this is useful for me. And this is what probably I want. And we hear that a lot when we interview teachers.
So Vinod, I've met you and Sarita at various conferences. And even after you guys have reached 4 states, 120,000 teachers, I always find this amazing humility that just comes across. And I know it's very real because I've seen it on multiple occasions, and both of you are so down to earth. Where are these values coming from? Like, after achieving so much, why are you guys still so rooted?
Because you think that you achieved so much, you've not achieved anything, you've not even scratched the surface. So our education system is also almost at that precarious situation where there is a massive problem. A lot of people have solutions, but nobody knows in terms of what's going to be the outcome of this war, right? So there is no choice but to be have humility. But I'm a great fan of Sarita and people like her who are in the ecosystem. I think that sense of tentativeness is a sign of quality for me. So when I'm talking to, that will come out. If you talk to a progressive academician, you will always see that tentativeness. And that's the core of education, is what I have learned. I'm not an academician myself, but it's a tentative process. Teaching 30 children in a classroom, it's not a linear process. It's a complicated process, And that level of tentativeness is very critical for an academician, for a teacher to understand. I think that's where probably a lot of Sarita's tentativeness and humility comes from, because she's been a teacher. A lot of my team members have been teachers, and a lot of people that we work on the content side are phenomenal teachers themselves. I mean, that's where the energy comes in, right? The ecosystem. I mean, we keep drawing a lot of energy from each other. The team is extremely passionate, so we are able to get a lot of people coming in to do this, who believe in this. That keeps going, and there is always, every day there is hope. So I've never had a day where I'm on the field, go to a government office, where you'll see a lot of depressing people, but there will be one spark there who will want to change. In the school also, you'll find that one teacher. So for example, I have this guy called Raghuvansh Ji, who sees everything that goes on the app. Now he's a super user for me. Even if a notification doesn't go, he's seen it and he'll comment on it.
Wow.
So that gives you energy, because there is somebody who's watching it.
Yes.
And that's what you need every day to kind of validate. Ek banda bhi dekh raha hai, that's great.
Yes.
And there are around 4,000 or 5,000 of such people who are super active right now, and there is no push-pull required. They're using it because it's there.
Great, Vinod. So inspiring to sort of hear all the different efforts you have put in along with the team. I love the insights on how at the design stage itself you have to make the operational decisions, how at the design stage you think about how partnerships would come, how sort of the attention to quality of content is sort of still a big gap, unlike what we generally think about content. I love the humility as always, a huge fan of the way you guys operate, and I'm looking forward to solving interesting and important problems together in this sector.
And congratulations to you to kind of start this. It'll be great to see. You should do it longitudinally. Let's keep doing these interviews in like 4 years and then see in terms of things changing. It'll be great. Because the problem's going to be there and we're going to be there. So let's see how it goes.
Great. I'll note that. Awesome.
Thanks, Pranav.
Thank you.